Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today I'm taking you to the Open Great League, where I just built a new team around Shadow Giratina that absolutely dominated the ladder today, and I was able to climb back into the 2800s. Now this team is built around the Shadow Giratina plus Florges core, a core that SS Thorn ran to become one of the first legends this season. I'm using Giratina as the lead, and I have Blastoise as the safe switch. I really like Blastoise's neutral play, and I feel like up energy, it can be really uncomfortable for opponents to try and remove from the field. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we're off to a great start in game number 1, leading Shadow Giratina into Stunfisk. This matchup is one of the reasons why I wanted to lead Giratina, as I was seeing a lot of teams that had Stunfisk on the lead, and Giratina just absolutely destroys it. Oh, that is unfortunate. Great catch by my opponent as they catch the Dragon Claw that was aimed at Stunfisk onto Corviknight. But I can rebank all of this energy because I have a Pokemon that does a great job at absorbing extra energy from Corviknight, and that is Florges. Florges' fairy typing makes Corviknight throw Air Cutter, and we know Air Cutter is a very weak move. So I'm very comfortable refarming all the energy, sending in the Florges. My opponent goes 0 for 2 on attack boosts, so now I can go for the Chilling Water and lower their attack to -1. Chilling Water is going to connect. In the back is Shadow Scizor, and Scizor will immediately be debuffed by Chilling Water, and then I can send in the Blastoise. Had they no-shielded, then I could have just gone for a rollout down. I'm not quite sure how I got a rollout through there. I don't know if my opponent ended up pausing a turn, but I'm switch locked, so they shouldn't have. But they end up getting the Night Slash boost. This will take them from -1 attack to +1 attack. They'll throw right before I get the Hydro Cannon, as they will look to try and burn the switch timer. It is going to be a Night Slash bait. I throw one, watching for the catch. There is that catch, as in comes Corviknight. But Corviknight did have stored energy, so getting rid of the Corviknight honestly isn't bad for me. I know they're pretty close to the Night Slash. I believe they should be one off, but if they bring back in the Scizor, they importantly cannot get to a Trailblaze before I get my move. And Night Slash just simply will not knock out. Blastoise will get to take the KO with the Hydro Cannon, and then I can immediately switch back into the Shadow Giratina. As I rebanked all that energy from earlier, my opponent made a nice catch, but rebanking that energy is what's going to win me this game. As now, I land the first Dragon Claw. I'm so close to Dragon Claw number 2. Mud Bomb simply will not cut it, and Giratina Altered will take the win as Dragon Claw takes down Unova Stunfisk. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Giratina into Talonflame, a dream lead. Giratina dominates this matchup. My opponent safe switches into Diggersby, and I throw 2 Shadow Claws and then send in Florges. It's important to not overfarm more than this because I want to get the Chilling Water on the CMP tie to the Scorching Sands. This way, I get to apply a debuff before they land their Scorching Sands, and considering that Scorching Sands is a pretty efficient attack, getting that debuff first is very, very valuable. Now, I'm not having to worry about a second Scorching Sands forcing a shield. Instead, I can always let this go. I am very, very strong into Talonflame with this team, so I don't really want to give a farm down to the Talonflame, as Talonflame energy can be scary. So I think I'm just going to pivot out and send in Blastoise. They send in Talonflame, in comes Blastoise, in the back is Gastrodon, and my opponent is running a team that is ABA weak to Giratina Altered. Because Gastrodon is now on Water Pulse instead of Earth Power, Gastrodon ends up losing to Giratina. I'm always going to be no shielding. I can survive a Body Slam, no problem, but my opponent is actually on Earth Power. Earth Power does give them a move they can do a lot of damage to Giratina with, but at this point, a 2-shielded Giratina, there's just no way for my opponent to win. There's no amount of successful baits that can even make this game remotely close. I'm always going to be shielding, they're always going to be baiting, but it's just simply not going to matter, as Dragon Claw will put them into farm down range, and then Talonflame will get absolutely shredded by an Ancient Power. So there is the full farm down. Back in comes the Talonflame. This is double super effective damage from the Ancient Power. Ancient Power lands. Talonflame barely hangs on. We get an Ancient Power boost, and we take the win. What is this in the next match? Shadow Giratina into Shadow Mightyena. I'm going to safe switch into Blastoise. Out comes Toedscruel, and I'm going to farm up to 5. This bluffs an Ice Beam. I want to try and pressure a shield from my opponent, and that actually works. That's really, really nice. I decide I'm just going to let Blastoise go and get KO'd by the Seed Bomb, but they're on Acid Spray of all things. People running some interesting movesets in Pokemon on the leaderboards. Acid Spray being not shielded is so unfortunate for my opponent. I'm able to get to a 3rd Hydro Cannon, so not only do I force both shields, but I'm able to get some really nice damage. In comes Giratina, they throw on Alignment. I'm always fine letting this go. It is going to be the Acid Spray, and in the back is Bastiodon. So a very interesting team from my opponent. They're clearly trying to use Mightyena to brute force switch advantage, and then once they have switch advantage, then they have the Toedscruel and Bastiodon core in alignment. I'm gonna need Florges to show why it's one of the most OP Great League Pokemon. First, I apply a debuff with Chilling Water, and now I'm going to boost myself with Trailblaze. Trailblaze only hits for neutral, but I know if I'm going to get a knockout onto Mightyena, I need to have a very boosted attack on Florges. So I'm going to be shielding up the Stone Edge. I've now invested both shields onto the Florges, and I go for the boosted Chilling Water. Chilling Water into Bastiodon will not be enough to take the knockout, but I'm taking such little damage from the Smackdowns now that they're double debuffed. I overfarm, throw the Trailblaze, and take the knockout. In comes Toedscruel. I throw 2 in the move. The second Mud Slap will not register, and I boost up my attack once again. I am now heavily boosted. In comes Mightyena, and let's see this damage. This is so boosted. Almost picking up a one-hit KO. Absolute Florges masterclass, and we're able to take the win. Tricky lead in the next match. Shadow Giratina into Dedenne. Giratina is able to outpace in this matchup, getting the Ancient Power before they can get the Play Rough. If you have the bravery to call a bait, this matchup is amazing for Giratina, but I decide that I'm not brave enough. I decide to respect the Play Rough, and it's the Parabolic Charge. This means the next move will be reached on charge attack priority. I'm just going to look to overfarm. My Shadow Claws have already gotten through half of their health bar, which is really nice. I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Ancient Powers. Their defense is boosted due to that Parabolic Charge, and that allows them to survive on 1 HP and make a last-second Parabolic. But Parabolic is only going to be hitting for Resisted, so I'm very happy to get that Pokemon out of the way. My opponent sends in Annihilate and then immediately switches into the Marowak. I'm not quite sure what they were doing there, but either way, they are completely core broken in the back by Florges, so this game will be a win. I have so much energy on the Giratina, I'm able to force a shield from the Marowak, get big damage onto the Marowak, and then send in Blastoise. Non-Shadow Blastoise will be able to absorb energy no problem here. They can fire off the back-to-back Bone Clubs, and it just simply is not enough damage. There's the switch into Annihilate. Annihilate will get hit for some pretty substantial damage by the Hydro Cannon. They get the counter down, but Florges will now get the full reverse farm, exit with energy, and the Marowak's energy dry, so this game is over. My opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Bad lead in the next match, Shadow Giratina into Shadow Gyarados. Immediate safe switch into the Blastoise. Gyarados banks a decent amount of energy, and out comes Galarian Corsola. I'm very fine to see Galarian Corsola on the Blastoise. With the energy advantage that I have, I'm going to make a third Hydro Cannon before they're able to make a second Nightshade. And that means Blastoise is going to be able to force a shield advantage. My opponent will be able to get the shield back against the Giratina, but if I can get an energy advantage on the Giratina, I obviously have Ancient Powers that can do a really nice job of threatening that Gyarados. Nightshade lands, Blastoise is able to hang on for one final rollout, and Giratina will immediately be forced to shield as Nightshade would do devastating damage. So I will get that full farm down. Gyarados will be able to outpace, so I'm going to throw 2, switch into the Florges as they fire off the Crunch. Crunch is going to be resisted onto the Florges. We do get debuffed, but in the back is Gastrodon, and this game is over. As Florges is able to spam out Trailblaze's opponent is gonna no-shield, as that's kind of their only chance in this game, is that for some reason I am not on Trailblaze. But now I have a very safe shield. I'm going to immediately throw the Trailblaze, and the threat of a super effective Ancient Power means they can never shield this. So Trailblaze lands, Florges boosts up its Fairy Winds, gets the farm down, and takes the win. Great lead in the next match. We have seen this lead before. Shadow Giratina into Unova Stunfisk. I'm just always going to play zeros here because I can overfarm, exit the matchup with some residual energy, and still exit it with a decent amount of HP as well. So they're able to land the Mud Bomb, and I'll return fire with the hard-hitting Dragon Claw. My opponent will go for the Mud Bomb right away. That's very fine, and now I can just overfarm and go for the CMP Tide to knock them out. So I farm up with the Giratina. I try and click the move, and the game just overtaps and it doesn't register it. That means I'm forced to go down a shield, which is really uncomfortable, as I hate going down shields in a matchup that I'm normally winning. Ancient Power will pick up the knockout. In comes Galarian Moltres, and I will connect with an Ancient Power if they decide to let it go. They no shield. In comes Blastoise. they are going to bank a fly, and then out comes Golisopod. Golisopod, they still have 2 shields to hide behind, and they will use the first here. These Fury Cutters do a lot of damage to Blastoise. I should survive an X-Scissor. X-Scissor will not knock me out, but I don't think I can get 2 more Hydro Cannons, as the Fury Cutters would add up too much. So instead, I'm just going to go for the Skull Bash. With the Skull Bash, I'm able to survive it, but without the defense boost, I think I would have gotten farmed down. In comes Florges looking for the catch onto Giratina. Catch attempt is unsuccessful, and unfortunately, I think I have lost this game. I need to farm down if I'm going to win, but judging by the Fairy Wind damage, I cannot do so. So I'm forced to throw the Trailblaze right before they get their fly, hoping that they don't have the back-to-back moves on Golisopod, but I know that they do. So in comes Golisopod. I have the boosted Trailblaze, which would win the game, but I do not win charge attack priority. Great energy management from my opponent on the Golisopod. Having to go down a shield in that first matchup, I think is what made this game a lot more tricky. Hopping into the next match, we pick up a good lead, Shadow Giratina into Credilli. Now, Giratina should win all evens versus Credilli, but actually my Giratina, by having a low attack, loses charge attack priority. Giratina wins this matchup by winning CMP over Credilli, and my Giratina having 7 attack and being 1456 combat power means that I do actually lose this matchup. However, I only lose the zeros. As long as I landed the Dragon Claw, which I did, I can shield and then just look to overfarm and knock them out with an Ancient Power. So even though I had to go down a shield, I'm still going to exit up quite a bit of energy. Ancient Power lands, I actually get a boost, they save switch into Clodsire, I bank all that energy, and I bring in the Blastoise. Blastoise is going to do very, very well against Clodsire. Clodsire full sends that Earthquake, as now that they've landed that, they can potentially knock me out with a Sludge Bomb or a Stone Edge, depending on what they're running. First Hydro Cannon gets shielded, but there's more where that came from. Blastoise really ramping up the pressure. Opponent is no shielding there, and they do a perfect overfarm. Very nicely done. I'm going to save my final shield because I may need it later. Now I'm going to bring in the Giratina. I'm going to farm it into Dragon Claw range, and I wasn't quite sure if a Dragon Claw would knock out. I guess I should have thrown it in hopes that it would have KO'd because I was pretty close to 100, but I thought they might live on 1 HP, so that's why I just went for the overfarm. So now I am down a shield. They have a Shadow Talonflame, and this could get tricky. Ancient Power into the Talonflame. I get the boost. I should make the Ancient Power. They snipe down with Credilli, but with the damage I've dealt to that Talonflame, Talonflame is now in Chilling Water range. Chilling Water does a ton of damage to Shadow Talonflame. Talonflame's fly simply will not be enough to knock out, and then I should be able to take the win with the Chilling Water. If I don't go down a shield versus Clodsire, then it's a lot cleaner of an endgame, but luckily we're still able to take the win. Shadow Giratina into Shadow Scizor in the next match. Scizor, a bit of an uncomfortable Pokemon, but Giratina can do okay here. I will typically have to go down a shield, but more often than not, I'll play the 2-to-1 shield and then just look to exit with energy. As long as the Scizor does not boost, Giratina should be able to Shadow Claw down. I have noticed that there are certain breakpoints in this matchup that can make it uncomfortable, but in this scenario, I do exit pretty healthy. Out comes Furret, and Furret is a problem Pokemon for this team on the lead, but aligned into the Florges, I should be in a pretty okay spot. They're gonna pivot, they have a Bullet Seed Credilli in the back. If it was Acid, I would feel a lot better, but Bullet Seed is gonna make life uncomfortable. I go for the Chilling Water, they shield and actually throw on alignment. I guess really trying to trap me on the field and desync the timers. I was gonna do 1 and a catch. So by throwing on a timing that I wasn't necessarily expecting, they are able to further desync the timers. Grass Knot will land. I'm going to farm up quite a bit of energy to the back-to-back Hydros, but they get a catch onto Furret. Oh, that's really well done. But the good news is I think I can farm down, but they survived the rollout. Oh no, Furret too bulky. They survived the rollout, knocked me out with a Swift, and unfortunately, I just don't think that I have the HP needed on Florges to take home this win. Florges goes for the Chilling Water first. If I don't go for the Chilling Water, then I'm not going to be able to survive the Grass Knot. Grass Knot lands, I'm barely able to hang on. I make the Trailblaze. Trailblaze does slightly more damage than Chilling Water, but I know it's not enough. Trailblaze lands, Credilli survives, and we lose a heartbreaking game. Hopping into the final match, Shadow Giratina into Shadow Marowak. Marowak gonna farm up, they bank a Bone Club, save switch into Forretress, and this is actually an uncomfortable position for me to be in. I could potentially send in the Florges, but I already know what their third is. Anytime you see Marowak plus Forretress, the third is always going to be a Bastiodon or a Carbink. And if that's the case, I'm gonna need Florges to help sweep the endgame. Rock Tomb lands, Giratina barely hangs on, and in comes Blastoise. Blastoise looking for a big farm down, but unable to do so. Forretress is able to make a last-second Rock Tomb. Quick switch by my opponent into the Marowak. Marowak will be losing charge stack priority to the Blastoise. And the fact that they're switching in a Marowak to a loaded Blastoise tells me everything I need to know. This is the team that I was expecting. I have the back-to-back Hydro Cannon, so I'm going to throw Hydro Cannon number 2. This Hydro Cannon is going to be shielded, and now it's time. Florges hits the field. Now, it may be really tempting to go for the Chilling Water to debuff them, but this is a scenario where I need the extra damage from Trailblaze. Additionally, if it's Bastiodon in the back, I want to ramp up my Chilling Water damage. Trailblaze lands, with the extra damage and the boost, we Fairy Wind them down, and out comes Bastiodon. Anytime you see Marowak plus Forretress, it's always going to be the Basti or the Carbink as a third. Chilling Water is going to do some pretty nice damage, and I should have a pretty guaranteed win condition, and that is after I throw one additional Fairy Wind, switch into the Blastoise. They can't throw energy, I just have to watch for the catch. There is the catch attempt, it's unsuccessful. If they ever throw energy into the Blastoise, then I can just win the game by getting way too many moves on Florges, so they're forced to try and go for the catch. I don't let that happen, and we're able to take the win. All in all, I had a ton of fun with this team today. This team felt really balanced to me, which I quite enjoyed. I think the trickiest lead that this team could possibly encounter would be something like a Furret. As Furret, you'd probably have to save switch the Blastoise instantly and play it out from there, land some Hydro Cannons, try and get some damage, but you'd definitely be on the back foot. But what I really liked about this team is even if you see problematic Pokemon for the Giratina, like a Fairy type, a Wigglytuff, something like that, you have play in the back. And if you see a Florges on the lead, Giratina can actually win zeros against the Chilling Water plus Trailblaze Florges just because their charge attacks are actually walled. So this ended up being a really well-balanced team. I wanted a Pokemon that could do really well into the Stunfisk, Gastrodon, Talonflames of the world, and Shadow Giratina does exactly that. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.